Hey everybody, it's Sean and Julie here from Chicory's Travels, and we just wanted to come on live and talk a little bit about contingency plans and our contingency planning process, and not only in like today's environment, but anytime you should have a contingency plan. And the first part of that, I think, is being aware of what's going on around you. So tracking what's going on in the news. And it's not, I know some people became full-time RVers to get away from it all, but you still need to have some knowledge of what's going on in the world to know what you should be thinking ahead for. So things like illness, fires,
weather,
any natural disasters, weather, all that stuff. You should be knowing what's out there and what's could potentially come, because what I like to think of is, they have that saying, like, when the shit hits the fan. But you kind of want to know when somebody's balling that shit up to throw it. So you want to know before it's ever a major problem. So when it does hit the fan, then you have a plan and it's in place. So I think that's very important, just thinking ahead about what's coming. And we've had several times where we've had to have contingency plans. One was Hurricane Irma.
Yeah, and that also goes into play what he was talking about, I think, what he was talking about anyway with this balling up thing, is being proactive. So not being the last person to decide that you're going to move and you're going to find a place. Because like for Hurricane Irma, we were down in Southeast Florida. We were on our way to the Keys for our first time. We were so excited because it was a bucket list. So when we started seeing Hurricane Irma being tracked, we didn't wait for the evacuation order. We went ahead and made the decision a few days early to get out of there. And what that allowed us to do, well, actually, even our first stop, we ended up not being able to stay at. We got to our first stop, and then we saw that the hurricane was going to be going around the Gulf side, which they didn't originally plan. So we ended up having to go even farther north. But what it allowed us to do was get to a place before it got full and be able to stay there and ride it out. Where some people were calling when they waited till it was a mandatory evacuation, they were getting stuck on the highway. They were getting stuck without gas, and then also there was no room at the inn.
Yep. So definitely, that's what I meant. Being aware of what's going on in the world around you, so that you should have some sort of plan for any event that could possibly come.
And just to go back for a minute, because I know that like at any time that something happens, whether like we said, a fire, a hurricane, or even what's happening now, it can be very discouraging and disappointing, especially if you're a new full-time RVer and you just got out on the road because you have this bucket list and you want to go to all these places and you can't for a while, but just know that, what they say, this too shall pass, right? And so we were disappointed we didn't go to the Keys that year. We actually didn't even end up going back to the Keys the next year because we had other plans, but we made it this year.
Yep.
It was still there. It was actually rebuilt now, a lot of the infrastructure, and we had a great time.
Yeah.
So you'll get there.
And the next problem we had wasn't due to Mother Nature at all. It was a major repair had to get done, and we had to be out of the RV for 6 weeks. So we had to plan for that as well. Where are we going to stay? What stuff do we need to get out of the RV? What can we leave in there? All that stuff. It took some planning.
Yeah.
And then finding a place to do the work, because not anywhere could do the work, and then making arrangements to travel out of our way to get to the place. It was actually here in Florida. So that's another type of contingency that full-time RVers need to be aware of and plan for.
And we're not alone in that. We could list probably several friends who have had various lengths of time that they've had to be away from their RV for different things like that, for maintenance, or if there was an accident. But we also know people who have had to go back home for emergencies as well, family emergencies, and that also can cause a huge disruption in the travel plan.
Yeah, and so I just want to say hi to Mike and Linda. They have their plan, and they review it every year. That's a great idea.
It sure is.
Yeah.
I think we kind of get that for Sean and I from being in the military. They call it disaster preparedness, but it's for every scenario, not just what you would think of as like a natural disaster. It's for every scenario. You have to have your family plan in place in case you're going to deploy. And so it's just kind of become a part of our life. And we just wanted to take the time to talk about it a little bit to other full-time RVers or people who are planning to be full-time RVers, because I've even seen some people on social media or emailed us saying, you know, I was thinking about going full-time, but now I'm not so sure because I'm hearing about, you know, campground closures and things like that. And we just want to say that, you know, if you plan ahead and you're flexible, that's another big thing. If you're flexible, that you're going to be able to work through it.
And then there's also medical issues. You know, Julie and I give seminars at a lot of RV shows throughout the country, and one of the things we talk about is full-time RVing. And one of the big things we harp on as far as having a contingency plan is for medical reasons. If you get sick, if your partner gets sick, what are you going to do in that case? There's, you know, you have to think about that ahead of time, and that's another contingency. But speaking of our seminars, another issue that comes up a lot is money, right? Especially in this particular situation where, you know, campgrounds are closing, boondocking spots are closing, lots of places are closing, and you may have to stay in an RV park and you weren't expecting to have that expense, or you may have to stay in another RV park that's more expensive, or you're out of work. So like all the rest of our seminars for the year, well, for the next few months, were canceled because of this event. And so if we didn't have an emergency fund in place and have, I guess, plans for our money as well, we might be hurting a little bit. But we learned a couple of years ago that having an emergency fund was a very good thing. And we have that now in place so that money doesn't become a stressor when you have to change your plans suddenly.
Yeah, there's a lot of RVers right now who are maybe snowbirds instead of full year round, and so they're going back home. As a matter of fact, this whole event has made me kind of want to have at least a home base somewhere, my own land that nobody can kick me off of. But a lot of people are going back to that, or they're going to family. And what they're realizing is, whoa, I did not plan for the expense of going, say, from Florida or Arizona back home to Michigan, right? Yeah. That year with Hurricane Irma, we spent almost $1,000 that month in fuel costs because we ended up having to go so far.
Yeah, so again, having money set aside it eliminates the stress of having to change plans on the fly and unexpectedly.
Yeah, and we have a lot of tips on our website for how to save money and then take those savings. So we talk about ways to like save on campgrounds or save on fuel. But then what I would encourage you to do is say whatever your normal budget is for gas now, if you can learn some tips to save on that, take that money and put it in that rainy day fund or that emergency fund, because that is one thing that's really helping us not stress out as much right now. I had posted on social media, someone asked the other day, like, what will you do? And I said, well, you know, right now for the current situation, what we've done is we've found a campground that has long-term residents. So we feel like it's less likely to close down. And also and it has a good rate because it's on a monthly rate, and the monthly rate is always a great deal. Actually, the monthly rate, if we divide it by 30 days, it's cheaper than staying in a state park. So it's actually a pretty good deal. But they say, well, what if it closed down, or what if all those campgrounds closed down? Fortunately for us, we have saved enough in that fund that, I mean, we will rent a place if we have to. I know people right now who are in rentals for that reason. And someone commented, well, not everyone is as privileged as you are. And there are some things in our life that I definitely feel are a privilege, but in this particular one, having a rainy day fund or an emergency fund, it's not privilege, it's planning. It's making the sacrifices when you make a budget and say some of these savings are going towards that rainy day fund instead of maybe going out and renting, going on a boat tour or renting kayaks or, something fun. We do a lot of fun, but we also save as well.
And then I see a comment from Sandy. She's saying that they have an emergency fund as well because you never know what life might bring, and that's so true. And it's so sad that it took us late in our years to figure that out. But once we figured it out, and once we had that emergency fund in place, we realized what everybody had been talking about all those years that we had been letting it go in one ear and out the other, because it really does lower the stress level when you don't have to worry about money for a few months. And like Julie said, that's not being privileged. That's just sacrifice and planning. And anybody could do it. I mean, we used to spend everything, and now we make sure to set some aside. So it really is helpful. If you are stuck somewhere now because you didn't have a plan and you're struggling to find somewhere, Julie had a couple of places, a couple of websites you could check out.
Yeah, I did want you to know because, the RV community is great. As a matter of fact, when Sean talked about the seminars, tell him what you say about the maintenance.
Oh, I always tell people in our maintenance seminar that if you just go outside your RV and with a tool in your hand and scratch your head or look like you're thinking, 5 people will always come out and ask if you need help. That's just the friendliness of the RV community.
Yeah, and now they might be staying 6 feet away, right? But people are still very helpful. And I wanted to give you some resources on social media and also a website that you can go to if you're currently in a bind and you're looking for something. So first off, if you are a Boondockers Welcome member, now that is a membership that you have to buy into. It's like $50 a year, I think. But if you're a Boondockers Welcome member, they just posted an article that many of their owners, because the way Boondockers Welcome works is you have these private landowners who, many of them are RVers, and they enjoy RVing and they have an extra pad or extra land, that they own that people can come park on. And so if you join that membership, you can stay for free. And they just put out a post last week that many of their owners recognize how many full-timers are getting stranded. And they're posting, we're open. We're still allowing people to come stay. Even if they need to self-quarantine on their site, they're allowing them to stay a little bit longer. So that's one resource. Another resource is there's a Facebook group now called Displaced Nomads and RV relocation or something. But if you just go into Facebook and search Displaced Nomads, it'll come up. And people are starting to post in there, the campground I'm at still has space, we're still open. And they're sharing things like that. Sean also shared an article today on our Facebook page about the RVIA, which is a professional organization that is working hard with campgrounds to convince the state governments for these private campgrounds where people can stay for a month to say it's okay to let full-time RVers stay there and they can still shelter in place. They don't have to do all this, every couple day travel, but stay open to give them a place to ride out the storm. And the last one is there's a website, Rootless Living, and they have actually set up a page where they're collecting all these different campgrounds and organizing them by state. So when this video's done, I'll go back in the comments. So if you wait or if you're watching it later, look down in the description. Not the comments, in the description. And I'll put links to all of these resources that I met. And if you can't find them, put it down in the comment. What was that again? Or send us an email, Julie at Chicory's Travels. We are totally happy to share what we've learned.
Yeah, I agree with John saying that he's still looking to go full-time, and this pause is still part of the planning stages. And that's right. Yeah, before you even make the decision, if you haven't yet to go full-time, make sure you have plans in place for situations. And I also want to say hi to Wheelin' with the Wendy's. They're in Pahrump, Nevada. And so what are we planning for now? So we're already thinking about hurricane season because we're here in Florida. We may be stuck for a while. So we're working out our planning for that already because it's just right around the corner. So we don't want to be stuck with our pants down when that comes.
Because we weren't originally planning to be in Florida. We're supposed to be leaving here the first week of April, but I don't think that's going to happen. So now we're already starting to look ahead.
Yeah. And when like our hurricane plans, as we start talking about it, we know that when a hurricane actually happens, that plan's probably not going to be perfect, but we know we have a plan that we can work off of and adjust and be flexible. So don't think having a plan is the answer. It's having a plan and then being flexible with how that plan actually goes.
Yeah, because sometimes you end up on plan B or plan C, or one of our friends, Julie Gant, they're the Wandering Gants, and she posted when I shared that we were going live today that they're like implementing plan D, so they couldn't join us live. So we wish them well on their way. And I did want to say to Lance and Flo, because they're our good friends that we were hanging out with in Tucson last year, that I'm happy to see on social media that you guys found a place to bunker down too.
And then I will say just a plug for my podcast, Beyond the Wheel. Kenny and I are fortunate to know a very good pulmonary critical care physician, and she's going to be on the show. We're going to record that tomorrow. Not sure when it's going to be out, but not just talking about the current situation, but talking about things you can do as a full-time RVer to stay healthy all the time, not just when there's a virus going on. So really excited to get that, because healthcare is definitely one of those things you need to plan for.
Yeah.
We even talk about a friend of ours who they started full-time. They got their health insurance in place, but they quickly found out when one of them broke their leg that their health insurance only covered them out of state for emergency care. So they were able to have surgery to fix the leg, but then they had to find their way back across the country to get all the aftercare done.
Yeah.
So if they didn't have a plan and an emergency fund for that, they would have been in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So anything medical, natural disasters, illness, weather, all that stuff you need to think about and definitely plan for. And a lot of us want to live and be free and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but you still have to have some awareness, or else you get put in a bad situation.
Yeah.
and it quickly turns into you have to settle down again and can't full-time travel.
Exactly. Any other comments? I took off my glasses to avoid the glare for you guys, and now I can't read any of the comments. I don't think Sean can either. Should I put my glasses on?
Wheelin' with the Wendy said they're planning on heading to Washington State.
Whoa.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then, and they're saying that they're hearing also about so many full-timers having problems. So as we're talking about this live, I was thinking about we should probably come up with like some draft shells of emergency planning tools that RVers can use. Unless anybody out there knows of one already, it's great just to actually sit down and think about it and figure out what you would do in various situations. So
yeah, I definitely think we could do that. And on the budget end, we actually do have a budgeting download on our website, chickeriestravels.com, that helps with that as well and helps plan out the budget, especially for people who aren't yet full-time. But I did want to go back to your podcast. So for Sean's podcast, it's beyondthewheelpodcast.com, or you can go to wherever you listen to podcasts and just put Beyond the Wheel. And if you do listen to it, please give them a review.
Yeah, that would be great. That helps us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that podcast is something that Kenny and I both do because we really enjoy talking to these businesses about how they got started and what they're expecting for growth and all that kind of stuff. So it's something we do just out of fun, and so it makes it really, I think, a good conversation we have with these business owners. I'm gonna just look at some comments here. Oh yeah, Heidi says there's lots of room in Quartzsite, Arizona. I'm sure there is. Yeah. Wheeling with the Wendy said they're not going to Washington.
Oh, no.
Now,
okay, yeah.
Thankfully, yes. And then
we actually have friends who have a work camping job in Washington, and they're, again, this is one of these examples, right, where they're not sure what's going to happen with Washington State is one of the hot spots right now, and so they're kind of in limbo.
And Mike and Linda, that's good advice, and I'm glad you agree that every full-timer needs an emergency fund. We've had to dip into that thing a few times now. So
yeah, and the important thing is if you use the emergency fund, then you gotta fill it back up, right? Because we have a saying, actually. So we've been, for those of you that don't know, we've been full-time now for 5.5 years. And what's our saying, Sean? It's always something. Because it's just part of the adventure. As a matter of fact, at one of our seminars that we just did on preparing for full-time travel, someone said, I really want to go full-time, but I just start thinking of all these scenarios of terrible things that could happen. And I said, yeah, but they'll make great stories afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. So now we can laugh about Hurricane Irma. Now we can laugh about the time we had to leave our RV for 6 weeks. These are all just part of the adventure afterwards. I'm not trying to make light of the fact of when they happen, but you can get through it.
Yeah, all we hope for right now is that Fort Wilderness is open back up by November. Because we have reservations. But
I'm really hoping to be able to go to Michigan's Upper Peninsula this summer, but I'm already kind of thinking it might not happen. So I'm really got an eye towards Disney in November.
Yeah. Why don't you check something?
Okay, so he wants me to check comments. That means I have to put my glasses on. Sorry if there's a glare here. Okay, so yeah, something will always come up. And so someone asked where we're at right now. We are in Florida. We had been in Florida for a few months because it was our RV show season. And what we do is we have so many shows in so many different parts of the country between January and March that we were staying in one place and then just flying out to those. And we've extended our time here. And the reason why we chose to extend our time here versus go on to our next spot, even though I'd rather go to our next spot in my heart because it's near one of our kids that I really miss, our oldest son and our daughter-in-law. But where we're at now, we're close to Sean's parents, who are in a higher risk category, so we want to be near them if they need us. Also, we are Florida residents, so I feel a little bit better about being here because I'm seeing some areas like near Moab and in a couple other places, Pennsylvania, I think it was, they're closing some campgrounds in general, but they're having exceptions for local residents. And so I feel like, well, here we're actually in the place where we are, officially domiciled, where our legal address is. And I feel it gives us a little better standing. So it's all a gamble, obviously. Anything could close, and we do have a plan B and Z. But we feel like this is probably the best bet. So we're in Florida, even though it's starting to get hot, and we would prefer to move on. And I'm sure some people in Quartzsite feel that same way, right? It's a good bet for them, even though it's getting a little hot. And then Willing with the Wendy said, yeah, it's all part of the journey. You just got to be flexible. So, yeah, preparedness, emergency fund, and flexibility sounds like everybody agrees with that.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on and joining us, and keep commenting if you're watching this video later and you have any thoughts or resources or good planning tools. Go ahead and drop them in the comments.
And feel free to share. I'm going to add, like I said, all those. I gave 3 different resources for people who are looking for a campground that is a good bet of staying open and is a good rate. I'll put those 3 resources, and feel free to share that anywhere.
Yeah, and until we see you on the road. I'm going to change it a little bit.
Okay.
Stay safe, stay healthy, and safe travels. Bye, everybody.